How confident are you that restaurateurs will be able to open their doors in July?
Well, we're all going to make a inhuman attempt to do that. It's not going to be easy because, and the main reason for that, well, there's a bunch of reasons, but what is making it especially difficult at the moment is that we haven't received very clear guidelines for government what that reopening is going to look like. There have been some leaked documents talking about a certain degrees of separations, menus that would have to be disposable, all those kind of ideas. But we haven't had a very clear idea. We've had this 4th of July date in the diary for quite a while without having any kind of clarity about what would it mean for us. And we're an industry that employs lots and lots of people, and we need time to prepare. We don't just open a restaurant tomorrow. If there's going to be a clear separation policy about perspex dividers or glass dividers, if it's going to be 1 meter or 2 meters, we need to know all that, and we cannot prepare without that level of knowledge, which is really missing at the moment.
And as you say, the 4th of July date, not very long away now in order to get ready to open the doors at that point. There's a review at the minute, as you know, of course, into cutting that 2-metre social distancing rule to 1 metre. How important is that for restaurant owners?
It's really vital. It makes the whole operation viable to a degree. I don't think anyone is going to be making money with a 1 metre rule, but at least we're going to survive. And I think survival is what we really need to talk about, because people do not understand that restaurants, which are jolly, happy places where people are having a good time and eating good food and getting great service, do rely on a certain number of people coming in through the door. And there's not much cash in this industry. And we've been closed, as you said, for longer than 3 months now. And when we reopen, we're looking at capacity, working at a very low capacity, 50, 40, 60%. We really don't know. So that lack of clarity makes things even worse, because at least we know what we're preparing for, but we don't know what we're preparing for. So I'm extremely worried, because it's not going to be easy, not at all.
Talking about survival there, the UK hospitality body, the industry representative body, says that at 2 metres, a third of hospitality businesses won't be able to reopen and 1 million jobs would be lost. How worried are you about the impact this could be on restaurants that just may not be able to open up again?
Totally. You know, when people look at restaurants, a busy place, with things going on, they don't understand that there's a whole little micro community that these restaurants attract. Obviously, there's the local neighborhood or offices around it, but there's the staff, in front of house and back of house, that love what they're doing and create things with great passion, every day, because they're not in it for the money. And then there's the whole businesses surrounding the restaurants. There's the farmers, there's the wine merchants, there's different suppliers, there's laundry services, IT. It's a massive industry that gives employment to millions and millions. And if we don't get the kind of support that we need, with the guidelines that I've mentioned, but also with financial, because the government has been very generous in offering the furlough scheme that has kept us propped up for a while, and all manner of loans. But the biggest problem that I've been banging on about for a very, very long time are the rents. Most of us have not been paying rents since March, and are not expected to be paying rent in June. Many of us, and that has not been sorted legally. This does not have the legal grounding footing that we need in order to move forward. And all restaurants, I think 90% of the restaurants, will all go bust if the question of the rent is not going to be sorted by government. Now, recently the government has published a code of practice for commercial property relationships between landlords and tenants, in which they urge us to come together and find solutions to these problems. But I think something much stronger is needed. We were talking about timeout, a nine month, almost a year rent-free, but that doesn't address any of the landlords' problems with their debts. But we really need government intervention to help save restaurants that would just not be able to survive on their own vis-a-vis landlords and the kind of communications that they can afford to have at this point in time.
Just to clarify, what you were saying there about the amount of restaurants that may go under if they have to pay these kind of rent payments, how many were you saying?
I don't have a number. I really don't know what the statistic is. But if you think of all the rent that's been accumulating over the last 3 months of closure, plus the extra debts that are going to accumulate by having either not operating or operating at a very low capacity into the future, we just cannot carry on paying the rent that we did. Now, for the rents to go down, obviously you could have a civilized conversation between landlord and tenant. But this hardly ever happens. That's just not our reality. If you're a big business with many, many, many branches, one of the big chains, then you've got the muscle and the power and the money to negotiate and play hard with your landlords. But if you're a single operation or just a small multiple operation, you just don't have the capacity to have these hard conversations. And if the government doesn't come in with legislation or any kind of guidance on how to do it, these conversations might break down and businesses will suffer. And I'm not only talking about the restaurants. As I said, there is a whole chain of suppliers and other restaurants involved. And I'm also thinking of the landlords, because if they're going to lose a tenant, nobody else will come to fill in the space at this point in time, because nobody will open a restaurant at the moment under current climate. So we're in a very, very, very tricky situation, and we really need some kind of guidance or government intervention to solve this problem.
When do you need the government guidance by if restaurants are to open on the 4th of July? What would be the latest time?
So we need it now. We really, really need it now. We need to know how many people are we allowed in, what kind of distance we need, how people are going to queue. If they're going to leave us to our own devices, they might as well say it now and say, okay, guys, you have to behave responsibly in order to keep people safe and a certain degree of distances, and go ahead, and we're opening on the 4th of July. We can deal with that. But the trouble is that often we get the guidance very, very late in the day. So after all these months of lost business, we're going to have a few more days or week of lost business just getting into grips with new guidelines that we've just heard about at the very last minute, which is very, very damaging for our industry.
And just finally, I cannot have you on the programme without asking the last question that I've got. We're all doing lots more lockdown cooking, lots of cooking at home at the minute, often with kind of store-covered ingredients because we can't get our hands on the usual stuff we use. Have you got any tips for cooking in lockdown?
My tip is fritters. So if you have a bit of flour and you have tins of chickpeas, or you have some cooked up vegetables from the previous day, you mix it all together with eggs, with some chopped up herbs and spices, but everything you have, and you shallow fry it and serve it with a bit of cream or yogurt or the squeeze of lemon, you're okay. Grown up, children, everybody's happy.